the Dock here. You're with Pastor Troy and the gang here. Don't you love that intro, Mother Beth? I love that intro, that On the Dock there. It's our own recording with our own studio. Ben Ottolini. I always say Ottolini. That's how it is in Heron. But Haley says it's Ottolini, so I'll try it just for this episode. I don't know if I can stick with it. But Ben Ottolini is part of the team. Lucas Winkler, Dustin Griffin recorded our own version, or we call it the Memphis Dirty Blues version of On the Dock. Hey, at On the Dock here, thanks for joining us. We're all about conversations to propel your faith out of the shallows and into the deep. Thank you for joining us. You have found us already, but we have multiple platforms to podcast. We're on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Facebook, Roku. If you've got a Roku TV, download the SermonNet app and look for On the Dock with Pastor Troy channel. We're also on Rumble, and download that great app, SermonNet. You can find our archives on the SermonNet and on YouTube as well, and you can check us out that way. We also have social media partners, Facebook, Instagram. I don't know how to use Instagram. I have one, but I don't know how to use it. But send me an Instagram. Teach me. Telegram and Twitter. We'd love to hear from you. Hopefully we'll have some more social media partners real soon. When you find our social media partners, go to them and hit subscribe, like, and notify, and share comments. We'd love to hear from you. We put On the Dock out every Tuesday and Thursday. New telecasts go out. So if you're subscribed and hit notify every time they go out, you'll hear about it, and you can keep up and be a part of the On the Dock team. And by the way, if you want to be a part of us at On the Dock, you can go be a Patreon sponsor at Patreon. You can become an On the Dock partner, both a partner and sponsor. Check that out. You might get one of these fancy coffee cups that are on our desk here. And if you want to find out more about these things, go to our website at onthedock.org. You can find our embedded viewer as well as access points to our platforms and to our Patreon app. Haley here is actually the designer of that website. So she's our creative arts person here at Community Faith Church, but has dual tasks, and we'll introduce her properly in a minute. If you have any other questions, you can email us. You can email us at info@onthedock.org. Donna Kranuski, our executive producer, would love to talk with you, and she'll send us questions, answers, anything, so we can get you the information you need to be a good On the Dock listener. So we're so glad to have you here. We're fixing to tee up an incredible thing. Let me just go around the table and welcome my co-host today. To my right is the beautiful mother of my children, the grandmother to one grandchild. The rest of our kids are unproductive still. So far, we're waiting on one of them. I encouraged one of our granddaughters today to get more productive. One of our daughter-in-laws. We need you to get productive. I put her on the spot every time. I just pray. Size. Yes,
Wow.
I want to have a quiver full. And so to my right is Mother Beth. Beth, welcome to On the Dock again. Lovely co-host. Hey, we have a special one over in the far seat. And Ruth Jane Subicat.
Hello.
Did I get it right, Jane?
Yes, that was perfect.
Oh, man, I'm getting better at it. Ruth hails from Boston, Massachusetts via Singapore.
That's right.
That's a serious distance from Singapore to Harvard, and she is a guest co-host with us for several series we're going to be doing, and her little focus at Harvard College, where she attends, just a little backwoods school, kind of low-level people that go to it, Harvard. She goes to Harvard, and she is studying right in the wheelhouse of what we're going to be talking about in these series. So you're going to hear a lot from her. We've got her here just to kind of grind on us, and we're going to love it. We're going to love to hear what she has to say. So Ruth, welcome to On the Dock. We're glad to have you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Oh man, here's the show. Here's the show, Ruth. The Mosaic Initiative. We're going to be doing a series on this, multi-part series. We're going to be talking about today the work of the Mosaic Initiative. We'll be in part 1, and we have none other. Across the table for me in the guest hot seat today is Haley Ottolini in Heron. Ottolini. Haley Ottolini, she's the executive director and the founder of the Mosaic Initiative. She is the creative arts director for Community Faith Church. She is a blessing. She is actually the art designer for the work of On the Dock as well. Her husband built this beautiful set. This table is his work. She gave up many nights so he could be up here doing this.
Lots of sawdust in
Lots of sawdust in your house so he could do that. And so we really appreciate that. But Haley's here not as a co-host today. She'll be back on some other shows to co-host with us. But today she is in the seat, not of the scoffer, but in the seat of the blesser today. She's going to tell us the hot seat. So we're glad to have you, Haley. And we're looking forward to hearing more about your wonderful new young 501c3 NGO. And we're excited about that. So welcome, Haley, to On the Dock.
Thank you. I'm super excited and extremely excited to be here with Ruth and hear more about what she's doing too.
I know. Ruth's learning some
Counting
stuff.
down the days.
Hey, and we're going to get her. Ruth's going to be here for a couple different casts we're going to do. We're going to be doing this cast. We're going to be doing another cast with Tamar Center. It's going to be incredible. It's our Zoom. It's the first time we're using Zoom, and we're excited about that. And then Ruth, when we're all said and done, we're not letting Ruth flew into Southern Illinois Airport on the 9-seat crop duster this morning. It was an experience of her lifetime, you know.
It really was.
Yeah, it's not like those Singapore Airlines coming over, luxury. You get on the thing, the guy gives you the
propeller.
Yeah, our son Caleb flew that thing out one time, and they got to the end of the runway. So like, give you the safety check, and the guy opens the door and closes it and says, "Yeah, if we lose cabin pressure, we're going down. Just want you guys to all know for a fact, I am jumping out. I feel it's much safer me trying to land on my feet than it is crashing in this aluminum can." And Caleb said that made him really feel good. You know.
Yeah, that really gives you a vote of confidence.
Yeah, so we put Jane through that, but Jane did it good. She looked brave.
Ruth.
Oh, Ruth. I'm sorry.
I knew you were going
I
to
got hooked up on Jane's stuff again. I'm
actually.
sorry.
No, people do that all the time.
They call you
You're
Jane?
focused on
Yeah,
that?
it happened just
I'm
a
sorry,
couple
Ruth.
weeks ago on a webinar thing I was doing.
I
It
can do
happened
it.
at my high school graduation, I'm pretty sure.
I've never called you Ruth to this point. Now Jane's fixated in my mind. All right. Well, praise God. All right. Well, I'm glad you're flexible. Thank you so much for that. And, you know, gosh, she's already grading me bad. That's what happens, Harvard. I went to Emory. I went to Southern Ivy. We don't have Ivy leaves. We just have like a piece of ivy. Yeah, I went to Southern Methodist and Emory, Southern Ivy schools. That's how we make our feel semi real. But we're excited. Haley, can you tell us? Let's just get started here. Tell us a little bit about you. First of all, I want to hear a little bit about you, and I want to hear a little bit about your family and your background. So, if you would.
My family and my background. So I am a wife to Ben, as you've said before. He also works here at the church and has been a co-host.
He's a worship leader here.
He's a worship
Yeah, he's worship leader.
I guess that's important too.
Yeah, no, it's a good. He's like my. I mean, gosh,
he's
like
our comic relief, our worship leader, and a lot of things. And then I am also the mother to two very energetic but beautiful toddlers.
Just for the record, I have pictures. Okay, I wasn't going to show this till the next episode, but because you've said that, I'm going to bring your family photos up right now early. There you go. There you go. Check that. Look at these beautiful photos. I mean, Ruth, are these not beautiful or what?
No, they're gorgeous.
I mean, they're like celebrities. They could be like in like a magazine. I mean, look at this. They're in black and white.
This is why Zion likes you so much.
Their family is just black and white. Haley's not really a person of color. She's just black and white. I love
so
black.
accurate.
Don't black and white photos just make you look beautiful?
I think Ben owns maybe 2 colored shirts as well,
Right.
so we're pretty
Ruth,
neutral.
Zion,
Yeah.
the little one in the front, top right, she's my buddy. So we hang together. We watch the B movie, Disney B
yeah.
movie.
And he
Yeah,
gives
the
them
big-
classic.
cookies. He gives
class-
them lots of cookies.
lots of cookies. We go in and raid the kitchen and get stuff. So they're my buddies.
They now every time we are at the church, they ask to go in to use the restroom at Pastor Troy's house because they think they'll emerge with.
They're
going
going
to
to get stuff.
snack.
They're going to get stuff.
They're
If we
just
have
smart.
stuff, yeah, they can't come out here with vanilla. I'll give them whatever.
And Zion is she's not a black and white girl. Like she likes full blown color sequins.
She
Luca
always
calls her a
has
glam
pretty
girl.
dresses on.
Yes.
The girls. So you've got great family there.
Yeah.
So Haley, tell us about becoming the founder of this
Mm-hmm.
project that you want to call or a movement called the Mosaic Initiative. Can you flesh
Right,
that
yeah.
out a little bit for us?
So I'll probably start by sharing like our mission is that we combat sex trafficking and exploitation locally and globally, and we do that through facilitating coalition, spreading of awareness, and the development and distribution of resources. So
I'm gonna bring that screen up for you. I
it's a little wordy.
There you go. No. This is your full mission statement, right?
Yeah.
But I've noticed that on Facebook you've tagged it down to combating. On Facebook you say combats here, but combating sex trafficking
And exploitation. I say
exploitation
locally
globally.
and globally because interestingly enough, some people don't include
I know,
the
I know.
locally with the globally.
But when you say globally, you mean all of us, right?
I do mean
So
locally and globally.
Only
yeah.
in Marion, Illinois.
But here they see it as
you
more
have to say
international.
locally and globally because they go, well, I don't want to go overseas.
Yeah.
Ruth, overseas is not Singapore. Overseas is across the Mississippi River.
Yes.
Okay.
Anything.
Yeah.
Got it.
Other side of St. Louis is overseas.
Yeah. And I grew up in the Midwest, and so I think a lot of people in my town had really not even left like their area, so their like scope of reference is quite small. So
Yeah, when you tell them you're from Singapore, they're
yeah.
thinking that's got to be some sort of drink or something like that.
they probably wouldn't be able to place it.
Right.
on a map.
Yeah. So this is this is the larger version of that here. And then you said you're also partnering with organizations, ministries,
Yes.
individuals. Go ahead and
Yeah. So, like one of the main goals and like the largest heart of our organization was to kind of create like a community of different existing anti-trafficking organizations to help one, foster that community, but really set like a standard of excellence in our field just by like increasing the networking and communication, because we do see a lot of reinventing the wheel, and in a field that's severely under-resourced for the people who are actually in the trenches. That's a large part of like.
So the idea
what
here
we're
is a
wanting
little
to do.
bit to help provide some cross-pollination.
Yes.
People aren't having to reinvent the wheel.
We kind of want to be the table at which like people can come to and create that collaboration.
If you see something going really good here, if you get that out there, other people
how
can
do we
learn
take
from it.
that? Yeah.
They talk about in education. They talk about the learning curve. You could help organizations by giving best from different ones elevate their learning curve a lot faster that way.
I think the older, it goes both direction too. Like we have like these older organizations that have been, existing 16 years, and they're really experts in specific areas. But then some of the new grassroots organizations that have that like fire and that vision and new innovation, like they can really learn a lot from each other. One, from the experience of the groups that have been there before them, but then two, like what are the newer strategies and like how do we best combat this and really I think our heart really was to create opportunity for all the church to be involved in anti-trafficking efforts because we're all the body of Christ. So if you're a hand, be a hand. If you're a foot, be a foot. And it really just expands the capacity of the organizations. So so that's what we do. How I got there is a little, it's been a journey over years of God, just kind of creating that passion and desire in my heart through a bunch of different situations. But I can't pinpoint the exact moment that I learned about that trafficking existed, but it definitely has stuck with me. It's something that I've been just even like self-education for probably the last 12 plus years, since probably high school is when I started really reading and learning about it. There wasn't quite as much out there about it at that point.
Right.
But in college was when I really started getting interested in it. And so I started doing all of my papers on trafficking because I was bored of what I was doing in class. I wanted to learn about this so badly, but there was no one to teach me. So I was like, I'll just do all of my papers on trafficking.
That's probably what got Ruth in trouble.
Yeah.
That's what got Ruth to Harvard in this track. Similar?
Can you relate to that?
Can you relate to what she's saying?
I think in a sense, maybe not trafficking specifically, but I think since high school, like being really aware of different human rights issues. I think for me, learning about like domestic workers in Singapore or something, grew up a lot around. We had like a foreign worker ministry in my church. And so,
I think I'm going to throw this in and I don't want to stop you. I want you to keep going because you're doing great. 20 years ago for us, 30 years ago, abortion was the main issue, the thing Christians were getting out and champion. And we still need to be champions of pro-life. So we are. Right. I mean, that's a result. And then, 15, 20 years ago, we started into marriage and different kinds of marriage and which marriage we'll do and not. And that was the battleground for the church. It seems like the modern battleground for the church right now, where the church is being called today, is the whole area of human trafficking. Yeah. And because the whole field is so big, and I can see why a group organization like the Mosaic coming in and doing some networking connections, especially in the sex trafficking, which is a subset. We'll talk about that in a minute. I can see why that's valuable, because every organization we run into, Hands of Hope does, our foundation, our church does, we do work overseas. When we run into them, everybody's so niched. Everybody's kind of doing their own thing, pulling their own plow, but they don't really know what's going on one block later. Yeah. Because the issue is so big, so global, so it's got a flavor. Every country, you can read this. I just read the 600-page report, just one piece of it. And it's got reports on like all these countries, and it's like 632 pages of reports.
It's my favorite report to read.
To network this and learn from each other, just that would be a challenge. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, like I was sharing earlier, I like to kind of compare, especially if people are starting to learn about trafficking. One, it can be a little overwhelming because there's so much information about out. There's a lot of kind of competing information too, because anytime you get into statistics about criminal activity, you're going to have varying numbers, and a lot of it's not to say guesswork for greater sense of, or lack of sense of term. It's hard to really gauge like how prevalent it is, and everyone's like observations and estimates tend to be pretty different. So you're going to get different information from different places. But I do compare it to kind of like the medical field. It's a really big topic. And I think when you find like experts, they're usually experts in a specialized area of trafficking, whether like, and like, I appreciate that about like, I know the paper you're writing is specifically focused on Thailand, and that's almost very necessary anytime you're trying to really learn.
Well, not just Thailand, but U.S. church partnerships with Thailand. So it's very banded.
Yes.
But there's 1,000 more flavors like that out there you could have chosen.
And that's what you'll find in a lot of the resources that do exist. They're so pinpointed, which is great. But a lot of the organizations that are creating resources or are involved in anti-trafficking efforts are so busy and so overworked and under-resourced that they really don't even have a chance to like they're literally in the trenches. To come up and
breathe and look around.
To come up and look around and see that there's someone in the trench with you, like right over there. It's challenging. Well, and they've gotten better at it. Cambodia actually had a great organization that we kind of tried to like follow suit after, and they kind of tried to unite all of the anti-trafficking groups in Cambodia, but there's so many small areas that they just don't know about each other.
Daniel's working with the Asia traffic thing. We'll talk about that when we do Tamar Center, but they're trying to pull those together. There is some success with that, but I think it's like a fire hose trying to drink out of. And also, when you come out of the trafficking issues, the problem is it's not just busy, but it's so depressing to your spirit and soul. When you do get a moment of free time, the last thing you want to do is talk to somebody else about it. You really just want to try to scrub your eyes and brain from it. So it's very frustrating.
Yeah. And I think specifically in the faith community, we have like a unique opportunity to talk on this level. But I do think, something that you don't see in like maybe the secular area is but even those in that field tend to acknowledge some level of spiritual oppression that goes along with it, because it's such a dark thing.
It's not some oppression.
It's a lot.
It's absolutely a demonic realm that we're dealing with. It is. And I know a lot of people that are involved in are just secular humanists. So they're not thinking, well, I'm possessed by the devil, but it is what's happening. When you destroy people's souls the way trafficking does, it is a spiritual sacrifice of somebody's life, whether the person knows they're doing it by omission or commission. And then when you watch it, if you're a pastor like me and I'm a father of 2 daughters. I've got a granddaughter. When I'm in Pattaya and I see men, not my age, men 70, 80, 90 years of old that should be in nursing homes with AIDS, I see them with a Thai girl moving them around. I mostly just want to stomp their brains into a mud hole and end their existence. So I have to really work hard to cool myself down. So I can see why people working in trafficking, I'm kind of at a church level. Yeah. But I can't imagine being in the pits of it, pulling people out and knowing what's really going on. So I don't know how the teams maintain themselves, let alone collaborate. So that's where I think what you're doing is a very valuable thing.
I think it's amazing work, and I'm always inspired by those that I meet that have dedicated their life to it. But yeah, there's definitely a lack of self-care, just because there's not a lot of opportunity to even have time for that.
Yeah, right.
So there's a lot of burnout, and that's what I saw.
The PTSD has got to be phenomenal. Yeah, there's a lot. That would be a whole nother study. You know what I mean?
Secondary trauma is a real thing. And
I'm not talking about just the girls and the boys that come through it. I'm talking about the workers that are in the battle zone. Yeah, it's almost like the war guys go over and fight a war, and they come back with all the stress from what's happened in the war.
Well, and there's a lot of survivor-led movement as well, and so there's a lot of triggering things that can happen, absolutely. And also secondary trauma is a real thing. You even see that with foster families walking through the things with their children. Right. You see that here, and that's something I've had to actively seek out people that can relate to some of the things that I get disclosures of sexual abuse or trauma probably every time I say what I do. Yeah. And that's been something like a learning curve for me.
Don't you think everybody knows those things in a healthy way? Don't you think everybody knows a story?
Yeah.
And what's funny is usually the story was left us overseas or maybe in this shady neighborhood in the past. But my wife and I just stopped at a truck stop coming home this week from St. Louis, pulled in, and there was a team set up there brokering deals in the what is that, Cesar Love's truck stop. I'm just going to say where it was, and they're working deals in the parking lot. So it's not something that's just in Singapore or Thailand or some other place around the globe. It's right here in Southern Illinois, active and alive in our communities.
Absolutely.
Right? Correct.
And especially if you have any presence of drug in your community, you have trafficking.
Because you're going to traffic to maintain.
Because if you put people in desperate when people are in desperate situations, especially like here, I think you see it a lot more by family members because of the opioid crisis.
So drugs will lead you into trafficking to maintain the habit, but then traffickers will also do drugs to be able to tolerate the addiction. There's just got to be a tremendous, terrible vortex of destruction.
Drugs in the industry for sure.
Well, I think,
and even as just like coping mechanisms. I mean,
and locally here, a lot of the people that are involved in drugs are trafficking their own children.
That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
So you see that a lot where.
Okay, hang on. This sound is my head hitting the microphone.
I know.
Yeah.
The concept of traffic your own children, I know you guys are all out there listening. Look, listen, this is Pastor Troy, the Long Doc. Listen. I know you think I've got Ruth here who's from Singapore around the world, and we're going to talk about Thai trafficking. But this is happening right here in Marion, Heron. It's happening right here, actively right now. It's not something overseas fantasized about. We're going to talk heavily about stuff overseas, but what we're talking about should let you take the pressure off, but it's happening around us.
Yeah. So just to give you an example of a story, like one of my
give me a break.
friends who's an emergency worker in town, and I won't give too much details because it's not my story to share, but just to give you an idea of what can happen here is there was I've heard stories of a young boy recently that came into the ER and had severe like trauma wounds, very clearly from sexual abuse. And I mean, he's younger than my children.
Oh my goodness.
My oldest is 4. Right. So, and he was being sold by his adoptive father at the truck stops. Yeah. And that's in our county. So
that's here in Williamson County.
Yeah. So it's happening here.
I'm naming where we are because I don't want to be confused.
Also, so I'll make a quick, and we'll probably get into this in a little bit, but there is a difference between, so like trafficking, really involves more of a commercial component. Like an exchanging of goods or funds or services or some sort of exchange of benefit. But also, like, I think it'd be neglectful not to mention that there's ongoing sexual abuse and it's super prevalent in our area.
Yes.
And especially, like, I mean, you can see the amount, like, our county has more foster children, I believe, than most counties in our state.
So there is there's a separate issue. Yeah. There's tangential connections as well.
Yeah, whether they were abused before the foster care system or after, they are high, like foster children, their risk factors are a lot higher for sexual abuse. And that's what I get a lot of disclosures of. So the thing I hear probably the most at churches is, yeah, that's so awful. It's gotten so much worse from then when I was a kid. And I'd like to speak to that because almost every time I speak at a church or with people, I have women who are about between 50 and 65 years old come up to me and tell me they were abused for 9 years by a neighbor, by their father, by their grandfather, and they've never once been able to share that.
Right.
And so I don't think that it's necessarily more prevalent. I do think it's more accessible because of online, and how things have grown. And it's really hard to gauge whether it's happening more or if it's just more accessible. But I will say that this is not something new. It's not something that just started. And I know like there's this tendency to look back at like the olden days and think that things were so much better or it wasn't happening. But I just don't think it was talked about and women haven't had that.
Okay, I'm going to put a pin in that because we'll get too deep here. And this is the first one. I've got pins in it. Trust me here.
Pins.
But
got it.
Pins in it because people say, well, this didn't happen. I totally agree with you. It was hidden. Everybody's phone is a camera now. Everybody's phone records. Every house has a Ring camera on it. We see, we learn, we do everything. All this stuff you were able to get lots of anonymity in the past. And authorities didn't take reports from certain people. They didn't listen to certain people. And so I believe this has been always happening. I do think the access to pornography, which is to me is the gateway drug.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a gateway drug to trafficking. Ruth, is that kind of what you're seeing so far to sexual trafficking?
I mean, I think so.
Pornography, the ability of it.
Yeah, and I think I mean, we can talk about this at a later time, but last summer I was working with International Justice Mission with their team in the Philippines, and speaking of parents selling their children, you know, a big issue there that they're working on is OSEC, which is the online sexual exploitation of children. And normally the people who are selling their children online through, I mean, it can be through websites like Facebook. It can be through like, you know, WhatsApp or whatever.
Snapchat.
Yeah, exactly. And it's all to customers in the West or, you know.
Okay. So, and we are going to come back to that heavily later, but because that's, I love what you're saying there, but here's the sick part of it. The sick part of it is because pornography is no longer at that store in the back of the place where only raunchy people go. Right now it's on every phone. Everybody can get every kind of deprived type stuff you can ever think about is available to you. There's only so much time that somebody digs into that. At some point in time, it's going to move beyond. What is the stuff that the anime in Japan that Megan used to like until what's it called? The anime that she used to, oh, come on. What's that? Kentai. There's a whole anime over there and you find when we were over there in Japan, we were in the store. She was so excited about getting the comic books that were over there, and she went into Tokyo store and then she looked around and it was nothing but perverted men in there buying the stuff. And it was like one step. It was like comic pornography. She wasn't looking at that. She was looking at different styles. Megan was, but they were in that section.
Right, but the stores were.
Yeah, that's grown a lot.
I can't read bills. No, bills are developer day. Yeah, hentai. Yeah, and so it's like a window. I figure though that the ability of online stuff and the access has created that gateway drug. It's like the marijuana for today. Everybody smokes that, but now it's not doing it for them. So now I need to find that local organization, that person that can deal with me, somebody. And so it becomes a gateway to actually living it out through some sort of actual treatment.
It builds on fantasy and
it begins to not be enough.
Yeah.
And they look for that. Now they're going to the parking lot. They're going to this place, that place.
And it's like the rule of firsts. They say that like physiologically, like neurological pathways are formed more strongly by connections of your first experience of something. So I think when you have 8, 9, 10-year-olds, like I hear that all the time when I talk to friends who were addicted to pornography, whether that's females or males, because it's definitely
both
something
ways.
that
It's definitely both ways now.
Yes.
And females and males are both perpetrators too, you know.
Yes.
But they were either introduced through their like, you know, sexual abuse. Maybe they were like introduced that way, or they stumbled upon it because of like the access online. And a lot of times it's pretty violent what they stumble upon. And if that's your first engagement with a sexual encounter is watching something that's produced, people are on high like amount of painkillers. It's not like at all real. Like it's not realistic.
This is not a relationship.
And you start
this
getting
is not
addicted to
yeah.
it. And studies
And it
have shown that it actually
normalizes it.
yes,
Yeah.
and it also like normalizes. Well, not normalizes, but there's been studies to show that it actually
changes the brain.
changes the chemical balance of your
receptors,
brain because
right.
it releases dopamine just like a hardcore
And
drug,
it creates people that can't have a
cocaine,
normal,
heroin.
healthy, regular relationship.
Yeah,
they
it's
become
really sad,
they become
actually.
falsely stimulated. Hey, let me do this. Let me drive us back up a little bit. We're going to get deeper in this,
Yeah,
guys.
we're already getting-
Hey, this on the dock. This is going to be a tough thing. But right off the bat, if you're dealing with problems with pornography, guys, listen to me, guys. I know there's girls out there. The girls can speak to you. You need to get off that. You've got to get off that. You got to get in church. You got to get with the pastor. You got to get with somebody to hold you responsible and get off that. That's just a gateway to doing more things. You're only going to be able to stay on Fantasy Island so long, and then you're going to do something that even perpetuates it, because the more of that you watch, the more women are exploited to make that.
Yeah.
And then the next thing you know, you're going to be not just exploiting them by spending clicks on it. You're actually going to be doing it yourself. So you're almost like victim, and then you're going to go to the next level of victimhood. So pull yourself out of that in the name of Jesus Christ. I want you to be set free from that. And feel free, if you want somebody to pray with you, feel free to email us at info@onthedoc.org. We would love to pray with you and commit with you.
Absolutely.
And I would be glad to talk with you about that or get you in contact with somebody. So let me come back real quick. Haley, I want to stay at the top level here.
Yeah.
I went on your website. I thought you did a beautiful job with this. You said the Mosaic Initiative's passion for this project was born from a desire for God's glory to be shown through serving others and the weaving together of the body of Christ. You wrote that really well. And you state, quote this, "We believe learning from each other's wisdom can greatly benefit all organizations involved. I think absolutely. Our heart is to empower each individual organization in their God-given strengths and giftings and connect them with others to collaborate. Love that. By doing so, we may increase each of our capacities to better serve those affected by sex trafficking and more effectively fight exploitation. We want to help strengthen organizations that are paving the way and help those following in the footsteps to grow. Our team truly believes this is not just our heart, but it's also the heart of the Lord. So I wanted to ask you that question, all for the reason it's saying here, I can hear that in your heart. I can hear that in your desire. It's almost like you're trying to stop though an ocean.
Yeah.
So
it feels like that a lot.
But the work you're trying to do is just amazing. So let me transition this, because I think we got to get these variables in. We've got about 8 minutes here, and I want to make sure that we lay a good foundation to get into this deeper discussion, because when we're talking about human trafficking, sexual abuse, sex trafficking, there's some language here that you have put forth that's, I think, really good. And I want to make sure that we work on our language and understanding the systems that are involved, and that we get good conversation about this. So first of all, human trafficking, you on your website, taken right from the Mosaic Initiative website, and we'll give you information on that in a minute. You define human trafficking. Actually, you don't define it.
The UN does.
The UN does. This is from the United Nations, Article 3, Paragraph A of the Protocol to Prevent, Suppress, and Punish Traffickers in Trafficking in Person.
There may be like an even newer version of this, but I think it pretty well is the generalized accepted
So
definition.
if you're involved, listen to me. If you're involved in the recruitment, the transportation, the transfer, the harboring, or receipt of persons by means of threat or use of force or other forms of coercion, of abduction, of fraud, of deception, or of the abuse of power, or of a position of vulnerability, or of the giving or receiving of payments or benefits to achieve the consent of a person, having control over another person for the purpose of exploitation shall include, at a minimum, the exploitation of the prostitution of others. And we're not talking about just sex here. Prostitution is using other people, whether it's for labor or a lot of things, or other forms of sexual exploitation, forced labor or services, slavery, which is happening today. There are more people slave now in this world than have been at any other time in the world. When you study that, there are more people in slavery now than in slave times of this country, and even back in the biblical times. So it says it includes forced labor of services, slavery, or practices similar to slavery, servitude, or the removal of, listen to this, of organs. Sickening.
Yeah.
So that's your definition there. Let me give you one other definition, then I'm going to have you flesh it out, and then we'll get Ruth here and get you guys to expand on it a little bit. Then sex trafficking is the subset we're looking at. So, right? Human trafficking is a big set. A subset of that is sex trafficking, and that's a certain kind of brand inside it. And you define on your website, sex trafficking is a form of human trafficking, subset. It is the specific exploitation of a person for the purposes of a sexual nature, and sex trafficking can look different dependent it can be different dependent on the culture and context, but in every context, the outcome is the same. Exploitation of the vulnerable by persons in power. This is oppression. This is a modern day slavery.
Yeah. So,
flush it out.
Yeah, well,
in some ways that's a bad way to say that here. Don't flush it out, but tell us what it means.
And not to jump back, but I did progress like in my journey to where I am now, from writing college papers, then to working for a missions organization, creating some curriculum for them, got even more interested in it, and then actually worked for a group called the Covering House, which is out of St. Louis, working with minors coming out of sex trafficking. I was a youth development specialist with them. Love my girls, miss it dearly, but we ended up having a baby and moving out of that. And I also just saw a lot of need for resources in this area. And that's kind of where I am now. So I have a little bit of experience. I wasn't in the field working directly with survivors for crazy long, but long enough to really get my foot in the door, and I learn a lot from them. Definitely don't know everything, but I'm learning every day. So yeah, human trafficking and sex trafficking you hear used interchangeably a lot.
I used to always think they're the same thing.
I think a lot of people do.
I realize that human trafficking includes sex trafficking.
Yeah.
But I always think of that first. I forget about abused labor, people that are being brought into indentured servitude forcibly in other ways. I forget. There's so much of it going on, but we are focusing here.
Yeah.
The Mosaic's focusing primarily
on the sex trafficking. Yeah. Because even within that, like sex trafficking is still a huge area. And so, yeah, that's where we specifically focused on. Although,
can I ask a question? And Ruth, you're an expert in this field here today around the table. I know when you say sexual exploitation, there are going to be some women that are going to say, it's my body. I can do what I want with it. If I want to sell it, I can sell it. Do you define prostitution just simple? I don't know what's simple about it, but is prostitution different? I realize prostitution's included. Is it different than sexual trafficking, or is all prostitution sexual trafficking? You know what I'm saying?
You're diving in deep here.
Well, I don't want to stay deep on it long, but we can come back to it.
So there's typically two schools of thought in our field. Do you want to take this one?
No, go for it first.
So there's two schools of thought. There's definitely groups that are more of the thought that it can be empowering, and if we can achieve like safe environment for women, that they define them differently.
Well, Vegas regulates it.
I think for me,
Las Vegas regulates it. There are countries that regulate it.
So I think the key piece here is coercion. And
what you're working
with.
With
so I think especially in the secular world and even in the Christian world, we really want to draw this line between prostitutes and victims.
Look, first of all, I don't want anybody of any nature going out and getting any prostitute. We're against that on the dock, so we're not justifying that.
No.
We're just trying to define the sex trafficking. Does that include people that are at a Las Vegas place where they're working under the state and all that, doing that? I'm just trying to get definition and language.
So sex workers, there's a big movement right now to say that that's like empowerment. But just even from like a more studious background, like if you look into more like research on it, I actually recently wrote a piece for another organization, a blog post about how sex work is actually exploitive in nature.
Right.
It's the only occupation in which you're going to be willing to accept that many risks, occupational hazards such as STDs, sexual abuse, sexual harassment. There was a study, it was done quite a while ago, but I think there's different studies. I think they're somewhere, and I'll have to find them and send them, have it next time. Between like 80 to 95% of sex workers are pimp controlled. And
that would be a form of coercion.
It's just another term for trafficker.
Right.
It's just more accepted.
Yeah.
So for me, I think, it's exploitive in nature because
Absolutely.
You're exploiting, something that, you wouldn't accept these risks in a regular job environment.
Right.
I'm questionable.
And that's not to say anything negative about, I have such a love for sex workers, and that's why I'm in the industry that I am. So it's not to condemn and even with those struggling with pornography, I think it's important to note too, it's like, I think all these things are very shame based. And when you let things live in the dark, it becomes like you give it more power. And so like to those who's struggling with these things, there is a lot of hope, and it's not to condemn you at all, but to kind of open your eyes, because I do think there's like a disconnect between thinking that like even pornography is like a victimless crime, but there's a lot of my girls, there was pornography taken of them that they had no consent over.
Right.
And to me, after working with the girls that I worked with, they were in love with their pimp.
It certainly charges up people to exploit others. Pornography,
right.
If it was consensual in pornography, it certainly charges up people to begin to exploit others in the process. And my feeling, this is me, and then we'll get Ruth in here real quick, and then we'll pull up and get out of this quagmire I put us into. But in my mind, if a woman's deciding this is my power to sell my body because I want to and choose, then we as a society have done a bad way of teaching a woman to empower herself, and it can only be detrimental in the end to her, to the future, and to our community. I mean, the fact that they've been left with that as a resource and think that's the only way they can provide, that to me, that's a dangerous thing for society. Ruth?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of discourse around this right now, especially with the new prevalence of like sex work that doesn't actually involve like physical contact with other people, where you can broadcast yourself, be like a cam girl, something like that. And I think debates are taking place around that, and also around, to obviously a different extent, things like plastic surgery, and like if you as a woman choose to get plastic surgery, like is that empowering? And I think what I've seen a lot of is this idea that like, yes, it may be a choice that you're making, but thinking about the context that you're in that wants you to make that choice, right? Like it's the male gaze, it's things like the misogyny that continues to exist in so many parts of our life,
Right.
that informs the decision that you're making. Like you would, in a vacuum, if you're alone on an island, you've never seen another human being, that's not something you would ever choose to do. It's because the context you're raised in, the things that you see. So yes, it is a choice you're making, but is it an informed choice? Is it a safe choice? Like, I think that's what's
Is it a healthy choice for us
Yeah.
overall as a society?
Yeah.
With so much addictions, I think. Let me pull back up on this. I'm gonna write a note down. We're gonna get into that again because I think that's all very good stuff. What you're sharing. Let me ask this, Haley, as we wrap up this, guys. This is just the introduction. This is gonna be fun and intense on a bad subject, but it's gonna be fun because you're gonna learn so much. It's gonna help you. Listen, guys. I don't care whether it's legal or not legal. Stay away from anybody that is not your wife or your spouse. Stay away from things that stimulate things that are not of God. None of that can help benefit the community. So on the dock, we just want you to love the Lord, love your neighbor, love your spouse the way that's appropriate. And you can have a lot of fun with that. Trust me. So you don't have to do false stimulation. Nobody can keep up with what they're able to paint and airbrush and do on TV anyway. So don't start down that path. God has a good plan, and he made it real fun. Mother Beth and I have had a good, healthy relationship for a long time. We'll keep doing that. So the Mosaic Initiative, let's get into that. No, I think healthy marriages, healthy families
I love it.
is the key to it. And I don't think we as Christians need to be ashamed of that.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
I think that's like a big issue with church culture is the even if I say sex trafficking, I can literally visibly see some people squirm in their seats.
And all of them are having
Because I
sex
said
because they all got
sex.
kids. They all
Yeah.
all you
Yeah.
people out there in church land. We are all created by sex. Our parents had sex. Okay. It's okay. Hopefully they loved each other. I was a mistake. I was an absolutely mistake. My dad was in medical school. I was a mistake, but you know what?
Not the best.
I wasn't a mistake to God. None of us are mistakes. We're all precious. We're all created with a plan. So get past all that. Nobody's been created other than Adam and Eve without the action of sex. You know what I'm saying? So even
Jesus.
And Jesus. We'll put Jesus in there. Okay. All right. But here's the deal. Haley, just real quick as we wrap this up, tell us, just give the tease of, you say in your thing that your long-term plans include developing a secure online network platform where people can kind of connect.
Yeah.
And you plan to have discussion forums, support for residential shelter workers. I guess that's what you're saying, to help people with the PTSDs at work.
Yeah. And so a lot has changed during COVID. So we're still kind of in the middle of doing more long-term planning and stuff. Even this week, I made some really cool connections of a potential mentorship program for creating a shelter for minors and things like that. So, I have a lot of dreams long-term. I think, 10, 12 years down the line, I do want to open a shelter, but I want to learn as much as I possibly can before I start. But yeah, I really want to focus on other organizations.
I see your long-term plan to have support for residential workers. Yeah.
So the idea that I would like to do at some point, it's getting logistically, it's challenging, obviously, when you have international groups, but I'd really like to get some actual even online therapy options for residential care workers.
And that's your interactive training curriculum,
to help
your support
try
systems.
and give, that's specialized for them, because I feel like it's pretty much the people you can talk to are your coworkers, right?
Yeah.
In that area. And I've been there, and it's really hard, and it's hard to bring home, and it's important to be able to process in a healthy way, because you also want to serve those that you're serving the best that you can. It's that oxygen mask principle.
Right.
And that's not to say that the people who work are these martyrs and we should I think that
you don't think we should sacrifice everybody that's trying to help our nation and our world get out of trafficking? You see, I can see here that a lot of your long term has to do with networking platforms, support for people in that work, discussion forums to vent, interactive training. And what you look like, it's about passionate about creating space to build interpersonal real relationships, support ideas, and you're noticing the lack of resources specifically in people working in this ministry. So it's almost like a relief system, almost
and trying to create the standard of excellence. I think IJM just in this last year came out with kind of a standard for measurement of success in residential facilities, and that was kind of groundbreaking. So I think that there's an assumption that we're at a certain point in our field, but to give you an idea, I think just this year in the state of Illinois, you're able to prosecute up to 20 years for trafficking, and we're a progressive state. So like I think it's like 3 years for most places. So like we're actually not probably as progressed as people may assume we are, because it takes so long and it's such a arduous process, especially working in different, like all these different governments work so differently.
Right.
And there's cultural things, and there's, you know, it's really complex, but it's all very based on wanting to create a more unified front for their, I mean, we're open to like, you know, non-faith-based organizations, obviously, but we're very like I think a lot of our partners are faith-based, just because, you know, we have a similar view of like what exploitation is, which is really just like brokenness, you know, and a need for the Lord. And
but it seems like as I close out the segment, it seems like a lot of your work's targeted at the strain and the burden and the overwork of organizations,
I would say that,
and trying to strengthen them and keep them in the game. Rather than getting them used up.
I'd say.
And developing a level of
so
and
I think
networking.
It's twofold. It's one, I think it's the burnout that I saw.
That's what I was going to say. I would say the burnout in this work's got to be huge.
Yeah.
And then because you're burnt out, you're
It's
not able to
insane.
cross-pollinate. So you want to create cross-pollinating networks and also give people a chance to get support and relief so they can get back in the game and be a part of getting rid of this effort. Being a battle line against it. There's always been human trafficking. There probably always will be some version of it till the Lord comes back and gets us. But we certainly need to see the tide turn way around, and the people of God need to stand up and not let it happen on our watch.
And if you can find healing or hope for one person, I think it's all worth it, you know?
Yeah, all right.
But yeah, I'd say definitely twofold. It was for relief, but also to expand for the purpose of expanding our capacities. And I'm a really firm believer that everything that if we're doing something for the Lord, it needs to be with excellence. And there are a lot of like newer organizations that are great, and have great intentions. And I've seen this a lot, even with, you know, just missionaries setting up. Yeah, I've seen a lot. Like I've traveled a lot with like mission groups and stuff, and I've seen a lot of really well-intended programs end up really harming the people they're trying to help. And so it's like, how do we become like, I think what it was is one point someone told me the reason they were not a faith-based organization was because the faith-based organizations had what's the word? It was kind of a stereotype that they were not going to do as excellent of work.
Yeah.
And that,
I agree.
That stayed with me.
Yeah. And
I was like, that should be the opposite. We should be the best in our field. We should be setting the standard, and we should be providing excellent care. And how do we do that? And how do we support those who are actually working their butts off? So
state that short mission statement again.
To combat sex trafficking and exploitation locally and globally.
There you heard it. That you hear the basics of what Haley's talking about. We're just getting started. It's going to be great here. I got it up on the screen. It's the Mosaic Initiative. Haley Ottolini in here, and Ottolini, she says, executive director, founder. And if you want to reach out to them, you can email connect@themosaicinitiative.org. She's got a wonderful website, themosaicinitiative.org, to follow. And you can also check her out on her Facebook. Facebook is at the Mosaic Initiative as well. And you can donate. She'd love to have you donate to the organization. Young organization always needs cash. Themosaicinitiative.org. You can go to that page, look for the donate button at the top, or write /donate, and you'll get right there. Love to see you give a donation to her and her ministry as they get started. We'll be back in part 2. We're just getting started. Part 2 with the local face. We're going to talk more about what we're seeing locally, and locally as part of the globe, people. But we're going to really focus in on our region in Illinois, and what we're seeing in Southern Illinois and Williamson County, and what you're doing in our national aspect. So we'll be back real soon. Haley, thank you for being with us in this first installation. You did a great job.
Thanks.
Yeah,
I hope I did.
And Ruth, Mother Beth, did a great job.
Thanks.
We'll get you guys engaged a lot more.
Mic hog. I'm sorry.
No, you're the guest today. So, hey, keep on joining us. We're always available at www.onthedoc.org. You can reach out to us and email us anytime at info@onthedoc.org. We'd love to have you find our platforms and find another platform. Always have a backup platform. So we're at YouTube for video and audio, and Spotify and iTunes, as well as Google Podcasts. We're also available on Facebook, Roku, Rumble, and SermonNet, all on the Doc with Pastor Troy. Find those channels. And we'd love to hear your social media comments about this: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Telegram. Remember, keep things nice. You can be critical. You can tell us suggestions, but always be nice. This is a Christian organization, and we're about family friendly here on the dock. And we'd love for you, when you find our platforms, to hit subscribe, like, notify, and share your comments. And make sure you share this podcast with other people. There's going to be a lot of good information flying at you in the next couple podcasts. You don't want to miss it. And we would always love to have you as one of our Patreon partners here. You can be a partner or a sponsor. Check that out at my Patreon and look for the On the Dock with Pastor Troy page, or you can link there through our website, www.onthedock.org. Hey, if you don't have a church home, we'd love to have you at Community Faith. If you're in the Marion area, Southern Illinois, we meet Sundays at 10, Wednesdays 6:30, and we have an online virtual campus at coftv.com. You can watch us on that channel, or you can watch us at Community Faith Church YouTube or Facebook page. If you don't have a church home, we would love to have you. And hey, we love having you on the dock here, and we'll be back with you real soon. So stay with us. It's going to be a great series. Get out and share this. We'll see you back soon on the dock.